Hello everybody, it is so lovely to meet you all. Thank you so much for joining the Easter Intensive course. My name is Hayley. If you have any questions, please don't be afraid to ask. This is a recorded session, so if you want to remain anonymous, change the name on the bottom of your screen, and if you want to ask any questions, then you can do so in the chat. What I tend to do is go back at the end of the session, just so I get into my flow. We're going to be looking at exam technique over the next 10 sessions, and I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see what the program is. So we're looking at exam paper breakdown. Now we'll be looking at AQA specifically, but some of the things apply to other exam boards. And also I am available to look at other exam boards. So if you are not AQA and this isn't helpful to you, give me a shout and I can do Edexcel, OCR, IGCSE, what's the other one? I can't remember, but yeah, I do several different ones. So just give me a shout. Next session tomorrow is answering the question and essay template for literature. So by answering the question, what I mean is it's very easy, particularly when excuse me, when you've got adrenaline running, you're in the middle of your exam, and I do it myself. You read the question and you skim the end of the question because you're thinking, I'm on a time limit, I need to get writing, I need to get going. And in that situation, it's really easy to miss keywords. So I have a little technique that's going to help you. And then we're going to use my essay templates. My essay template is basically where I will teach you how to structure your answer. So one of the biggest things I'm finding this year, which is 2024, if anyone's watching next year, is that so much of the stuff that you're learning in school is about content. It's about remembering quotes, remembering the poems, because obviously you can't take the text in with you. So much of it now is about memory. And actually, because obviously your teachers want you to get amazing grades, they're having to use the small amount of time they've got to get those quotes and texts and poems in your brains. But what's missing is how to actually answer the question. So you've all got all this information, and then you're chucking it down on the page and it's not getting you the marks you deserve for the content you're putting in, because you're not getting the marks for structure and organization. So my essay template is going to solve that for you. And every student, 100% of I've taught over 300 students, 100% of those students so far have increased their grade by 1 to 3 grades just by putting that template into practice. And it's really easy. So please trust me, because those who have then tried to go, oh, well, I don't need to do the template, have then dropped a mark, or some have dropped actually 2 to 3. And then they put the essay template back in place, and they're like, oh, how funny, my grade's gone up. It's almost like I know what I'm doing. Then we're going to do the same thing for language. So the template is ever so slightly different for language, because you're not needing the supporting quotes, but you're needing to support your answer in slightly different ways that are going to get you in those upper kind of echelons of the exam marking scheme. Session 4, we're going to be looking at language techniques and ambitious vocabulary. So this is going to get you much higher in the mark scheme, because so many people are writing fantastic answers but playing safe with their vocabulary. And the terminology in the mark scheme is ambitious vocabulary, but you also need to get it right. So we're going to come up with a couple of words that you can chuck in there that obviously you're going to understand, that are going to get those grades up for you just by changing a couple of words. And the language techniques are things like your alliteration, your metaphors, your similes. Let's find really easy ways of remembering them, because even if you're bang on and you know your language techniques, soon as you get into that exam and that cortisol and the adrenaline is going and you're feeling nervous and you're like, oh my God, it's my exam, that's when things start to go out the window a little bit. And it's not your fault. It happens to all of us when we're nervous. I'm nervous right now. I'm really worried I'm going to mess up. But, you just have to keep going, and have some tips that are going to help you. Session 5, it's actually 5 and 6 are going to be together. So we've got Tuesday in this particular course, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're doing 1 hour. And then Friday we're doing 2 hours because obviously it's bank holiday Monday. So actually it might be two. I might have got my days mixed up. But anyway, at some point there are 2 double sessions. It's at the end of each week. So the Friday of each week is 2 double sessions. So then we're going to look at the model answers. So that means that we're going to look at 2 to 3 different possible answers that have been submitted, been marked, not by you guys. So don't worry, I'm not going to be pulling up your answers and going, oh, look, they've done this wrong. That's not the point. We're going to look at these 3 answers together and see how they were graded and why they were graded that way, and look at the actual mark scheme. Now, I know this sounds ridiculously thrilling and exciting, perhaps not. But the reason we do this is categorically, I guarantee it will change your answers such a teeny bit, but enough to get you higher grades. Because so many students don't look at the mark schemes mostly, and I was the same even when I did my GCSEs 5 million years ago, that it gets to the point where you're just like, it's so overwhelming. How can I possibly look at a mark scheme for English? In which case I then, really need to do the same for science and geography and history and all these mark schemes become this overwhelming. Let me tell you, the quickest way to improve in any of your exams is to look at the mark scheme. Once you know how you're marked, you can tailor your answer to get the highest marks. It sounds so simple, but it's so easy. So my advice to you for any of your revision, and we'll come up to that in a minute, is read the mark scheme, okay? Even if that's all you do, read the mark scheme for your revision. So we're going to do session 5, we're going to look at model answers and the mark scheme for literature. Session 6 is exactly the same, but for language, because it's slightly different. Session 7, we're looking at quotes. So I know you have to remember all these endless quotes. Well, what we're going to do is actually come up with a couple of quotes, well, maybe more than a couple, for each text that are going to cover more than one theme. So instead of having to remember 10 quotes per theme, and you've got, 6, 7, 8 themes, you're actually only going to have to remember a certain number of quotes that you can then apply to different themes, minimizing how much you have to remember. Okay. Session 8, we're going to be looking at poetry, both the unseen and the anthology. Now, I have a bit of a system in place that means that you can look at any poem, including the anthology, and you'll be able to answer the question and get a bigger mark, a higher mark. That was not good English. A higher mark without having to completely understand what the poem is about. Okay, so let me say that again. I'm going to give you a way to analyze a poem where you can get a good mark without having to fully understand the poem. So this works really well for unseen, and it also works for your anthology poems if you have a bit of a brain fuzz and you go into your exam, you go, oh, I can't remember any of my poems, or I can't remember what was in that poem, or whatever. This is going to help you. Okay. Session 9, we're going to be looking at revision techniques. So, for example, one of the things that I find really helps is to go above and beyond when you come to actually planning your revision. Now, it's really easy to get completely overwhelmed with planning the revision and then not actually having the time to do it. But now is the perfect time to start revising. So if you haven't started already, don't panic. This course in itself is a revision, and it's going to fast track your revising because it's going to tell you how to do it effectively. But your revision techniques are basically going to be around remembering smaller amounts of things, summarizing rather than relearning, and also looking at planning your timetable so that you're more specific. And that means that you're actually going to create a timetable that is not just, oh, Tuesdays I do English, because then you sit down to do your revision for English and you suddenly go, I don't know what to revise. And then we get distracted by the phone, and we get distracted by drawing and doodling and things on Instagram. And I do it myself. So this is going to help you go, right, okay, well, today I'm doing language techniques. And if I don't do it today, I actually don't get another chance, because next week or next English revision session, I've got something else planned, and I've got something else planned. And it makes it much more specific and much easier for you to be able to do in smaller chunks. And it also gives you a sense of accomplishment and achievement. You can say, by the time it gets to your exam, you'll be able to say, do you know what? I have covered revising everything in detail for my exam. I've gone into my exam knowing full well I could not have revised anymore because I've done everything. So there is an end point. Whereas I find that with revision, when we're going to revise, it becomes this kind of like unknown entity. And then it means that we actually don't know what to actually do when we revise. So this is going to tell you. And then finally, we're going to finish on what I call, what a lot of people call an hour of power. So I actually run a few other businesses. And what I learnt from my business education is that everybody who is successful that you read about, that have written business success books and all sorts of things, really successful, giving talks, and they're on TED Talks and all that kind of stuff, all of them have this kind of habit. They have this, what's the word I'm looking for? They have a system. That's the word I'm looking for. They have a system where they are going through certain things every day to keep their energy high, to keep their mind focused without it being a drag. So it helps them stay motivated without making the effort to be motivated. It helps them get their brains focused on the things they need to, so they hone in on those things during the day and don't get distracted. And it also just makes you feel good, makes you feel better in the morning, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm certainly feeling the nerves for my students at the moment. So goodness knows what it'll be like in 6 to 10 weeks. And we need to look after ourselves so that we can not only perform our best, but because our mental health is really important. And that is one of the biggest things that I am a massive advocate of. And then we'll have a Q&A, just generally, like, is there anything that's bothering you? Is there anything that I can help you with? And that could be English specific, or it could be like, I don't know, how do I stop feeling nervous? Or how do I stop sleeping in the mornings? Or how do I sleep better? You know, it could be all different things like that. And we're going to cover all that kind of stuff, healthy habits, how to get through your exam period without being completely exhausted and feeling like you're living on your nerves for the whole time. So that is our there we go. That is our program for the next 10 sessions. So let's crack on with today. So let me pull up my next, very prepared, my next picture. So today we are looking at exam technique, I believe. Hang on. Exam breakdown, that's right, exam paper breakdown. See, we all make mistakes. And that's one of the things I really want to encourage with you as well. One of the things I found with a lot of my students is that actually they have all the content and they have all the answers, but there's this fear of saying it. There's this fear of writing it down. So even by talking to them, I'm sort of getting this kind of thing of like, oh, well, I think it means da 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 da, and I don't, and then maybe I don't, I kind of, yeah, something like that. I don't know. And it's like this lack of confidence in your own voice, and this lack of confidence in your in what you're going to write. You've been doing this for 2 years, you know this stuff. Even if you think you don't, you'll be surprised at what you do know. So you need to, first of all, start to trust yourself. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. The biggest thing you can do to help yourself is to commit. Say what's in your head, get it on the page. That's the biggest thing that you need to be doing. Okay, so I'm just going to be looking at exam board info. Right, so let's have a little look at this. Now, as I'm sure you're well aware, and I apologise if I'm teaching you stuff you already know, but I just want to make everything totally clear and explain it in a Hayley way so that it's nice and systematic. So basically, what we do is look at your 2 exams. you've got English literature, and you've got English language. They are two separate exams. By that, I mean, if you've got history GCSE and you've got textiles GCSE, you have English GCSE and you have English literature GCSE. Now, for you to get onto the courses you want and things like that, if you're currently at the sort of lower end of your grades, then to get into things like colleges and things like, they're looking for a bare minimum of your English and maths. It's the English language that you want to be focusing on. Okay, if you have to choose, obviously you want to do both, but that's the one you want to focus on. That's the one they're looking at. So the English literature is still really important, of course, and we want to get you to GCSEs if we can. But if you needed to make the choice on what to focus on, language is the one that is what employers are looking for if you're not going in to do other English things. So I am just going to share my screen with you. But actually, no, before I confuse you with all my crazy notes, you've got your two exams. You've got English language and English literature. In each of those, you have two exams, okay? So 2 GCSEs, 2 exams in each. Within each exam, 2 papers in each. Yeah, 2 exams in each, same thing. Within each paper, you have 2 sections, okay? Section A and Section B. In your language, Section A is always reading. Section B is always writing. And what you write on will be around the same topic of what you read, what your reading section is about. So, for example, if your reading section is about the weather in Korea, don't know where that came from. Say it's about, you're reading 2 sources about the weather in Korea, and you have to answer questions based on what's written. Yeah, that's your section A, that's half of your paper. When it comes to section B, it might ask you to write about the weather in your country or the weather in a foreign country, or it might ask you to write about Korea. I don't know what it might ask you to write about Korea. That's a very specific subject, so don't worry about that. But do you see how it's going to link to some extent? With your English literature, you've got your 2 papers. In each paper, you've got 2 sections. And that's going to be, each section is going to be one on your novel, which is usually A Christmas Carol. A lot of people are doing A Christmas Carol. Some people are doing Frankenstein, and some people are doing Jekyll and Hyde. Some people are doing Of Mice and Men. So whatever you're doing, that's your one of the quarters is going to be your novel. The second one is going to be your play, your dramatic text, which I'm yet to meet anybody who isn't doing an Inspector Calls. So an Inspector Calls will be one of those. The third text will be your Shakespeare. I think I've got, what have I got? I've only had Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet from my students this year. Most people do Macbeth. But some of you might be doing different. That's absolutely fine. But whatever your Shakespeare is, it'll be that one. And then the 4th quarter is on your poetry. Okay, so you've got your unseen poetry and your anthology. And your unseen poetry will be taking a poem that you've not seen before and comparing it to a poem that you have done in your anthology. So it's kind of anthology anyway. So that gives you an idea of how your literature paper is broken down. Going back to your language paper, you are going to have in your section A and B on paper 1 and paper 2. You are going to, as I said, be asked to do reading and then writing, reading and then writing. So when it comes to there are 2, so there's the creative writing paper and there is the viewpoints paper. So the creative writing is you reading 2 sources of creative writing, say like fiction or something like that, and answering questions on it to show you understand what they're asking you. Section B on the creative writing paper will be about, it'll be asking you to write a creative writing piece, okay? What they're trying to get out of you here is your language techniques. So this is the point where you go, if you imagine you've got a belt around you, imagine you're like a roofer. My brother's a roofer, that's what makes me always think of this. Imagine you're a roofer and you've got all your tools in your belt around you, and you've got your hammer, you've got your chisel. I don't know what roofers use. You've got your hammer, your chisel, you've got your screws, you've got I don't know, tiles. That'll probably help. Probably not in your belt because they're quite heavy, but imagine you've got a tile in your belt. Just go with me on this. Right, so you've got all these things in your tool belt. It is not your job to use every single tool in every single question. That will actually lose you marks. A, because you'll run out of time, and B, because part of the exam is the examiner needs to see that you have chosen the appropriate tool for that particular question. Okay, so that means when you're doing, for example, your viewpoints paper, your language, hope you're following me on this. So if you've got your viewpoints paper in your language GCSE, you want to be making sure that you are using, if it depends on what the question is, using things to show that you know how to write appropriately. For example, if they said, write a speech giving your view on animal cruelty, okay? It'll probably have a quote about animal cruelty, saying something like "animal cruelty needs to." It'll be a very very black or white comment, and it will say something like, "Animal cruelty needs to stop immediately. It's cruel and unnecessary in this day and age." And then it will say something like, "To what extent do you agree with this comment?" My advice to you would be very adamant about one or the other. Okay, so either be all for it or all against it, and then at the very end just add one little sentence that throws it all into question. So you might be like, for example, I firmly agree that to a huge extent that animal cruelty has to stop. I think it's very cruel. My friend Anna down the road has only uses cruelty-free cosmetics. There's no need to use animals for this reason, blah, blah, blah. You know, always give examples, even if you make it up about your friend Anna or whatever. So yeah, I totally disagree with it. I totally disagree with it. I totally disagree with it. And then at the very end, you might say, in conclusion, I feel that animal cruelty is unnecessary. And I've explained this reason, this reason, this reason why. However, and this is where you change it just for that last sentence. However, it cannot be denied that if one of my family were to need a drug that had been tested on animals to save their life, I would have no choice but to accept it. And this makes me feel uneasy, or this makes me feel, okay? That's really important. Because what that does is that shows that you're willing to have a huge argument, use all the tools you need. So you, out of your toolbox, or your tool belt, you're using things like persuasive writing. That's basically what they're looking for in there. Persuasive writing, they're looking for you to use your language techniques. So things like the rule of three, repetition, alliteration, rhetorical questioning, metaphors, similes. We'll go through all of these in detail in one of our next sessions. But this is where they're looking for all those things, but being used appropriately. So you don't want to be, for example, I know there's a past paper that I did with one of my students the other day that is writing to the Minister of Education to say that teens learn very differently to how adults learn, and we need a radical change of the education system to accommodate this. And when they were coming to write their answer, they were suddenly trying to throw in all their language techniques. And I was like, that's great, but some aren't really appropriate. So some would be much better used in a speech than they would be in a letter. So for example, I'm sure you've all heard, I always use this example, look it up if you haven't seen it, Tony Blair and his speech, I think it was in Manchester. Tony Blair was Prime Minister quite a while ago. And he famously did a speech where he said the most important thing in our manifesto is education, education, and education. So that's a really obvious rule of three and repetition that really hones in on what he is trying to communicate to his listeners and his audience. And if you used that in an email to the Minister of Education, which requires formal language because it's someone in the government, it's not quite appropriate. So that might be a technique that you leave out, and it's your ability to assess what you think is right to go in there. So if in doubt, and we'll go through this later, but if in doubt, you want to pick a couple of your language techniques, but that give this the right impression. So for example, in this letter to the Minister for Education, a rhetorical question would be perfect. So instead of saying, I feel that all teenagers need to all teenagers need to be considered and have a change to their timetable to accommodate their sleep needs, you would just change that into a question. Don't you feel as a teenager, we need to change our timetables to accommodate our sleep needs? Wouldn't you want that to happen for you? Yeah, so you've got like two rhetorical questions. You're really making it obvious that you've got those in there. You don't have to put everything in. So rewinding a little bit, just to recap, we've got our English language, we've got our English literature. We've got 2 exams for each one, or 2 papers. Within each paper, we have 2 sections. In language, section A reading, section B writing, section A reading, section B writing. One of them is on creative writing, one of them is on viewpoints, which we were just talking about. And in English literature, we have 2 papers or exams. In each paper or exam, we have section A and section B, section A and section B. And that is your 3 texts, and one is on your poetry, both anthology and unseen. So you will know exactly what is on each paper before you go in. And this is something we'll look at in our revision timetabling, so that you know before you go into your exam exactly what they're going to ask you. Okay, well, maybe not exactly, but very, 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 very closely. So going back to the language, we've got our viewpoints, which we've just looked at, and they are looking for you to give your opinions. Okay, doesn't mean you don't give supported answers. So like I was saying, even if you make something up, saying that in my experience, this is why I believe this is why my opinion is this. And that can be an experience you've had in your life. It can be a made-up experience, it doesn't matter. But it still shows that you are supporting your answer, not just saying, well, I think all schools should only be 2 hours a day because teenagers need more sleep. It's like, okay, great. And so you want to add that bit in of, for example, I find that when I've had more sleep, I'm more focused in class. I'm da, 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 da. Or my friend Jemima, she has insomnia, and so if she can sleep later, if she falls asleep later, so she sleeps later, she gets up later. Therefore, if college or school was started later and finished later, she would be more alert for those first few lessons. So it's that kind of thing. It validates what you're saying. Then onto the creative writing. So the creative writing paper is, again, you're going to have section A and section B. Section A will be reading. So as I said earlier, you'll have 2 sources from 2 fictional books, or 2 creative writing extracts. And you'll be asked questions to show that you understand what the writing is about, basically. Then the writing section is really open, okay? So this one will usually be an option of 2 questions. One is based on a picture, and one is based on kind of like it's usually a kind of theme. It's very, very vague, so it's like a theme or a topic or a situation. So for example, one of them in the past papers was describe an unlikely friendship, or write a story about an unlikely friendship. So off the top of my head, I mean, I'm just thinking, right, okay, could be something completely bizarre. Could be between a frog and a penguin. Yeah, so there's this frog and this penguin. Could be a children's story. It's fine. All you need to be putting in there is the fact that it's an unlikely friendship because one's a frog and one's a penguin, and let's face it, how many frogs and penguins make friends? But what you're doing with that is, all they're trying to do is give you an opportunity to write. They just want you to write. And what they want to see in your writing is that you can do all your language techniques. This is where you get to show off all the tools in your tool belt. You can use rhetorical questions, you can use alliteration, metaphors, similes, assonance. You can use everything as long as you use it appropriately. Okay, this is where you chuck in as many of your ambitious vocabulary words as you can. This is where you get creative, you get dramatic. Oh my gosh, right. Dramatic for your creative writing. One of the things that I use as an analogy is, I don't know if you've seen this, my son's obsessed with Lego Batman. So if you've seen the Lego Batman movie, it opens and there's a black screen and it goes, black. Every good film starts with a black screen. I think they use a better word than good, but it's something like that. That sentence structure is so dramatic. That's the kind of thing we want to be chucking in there. You want to be highlighting like a massive beam pole. Like, is that a beam pole? Is that what I mean? A beacon. That's what I mean. A massive beacon, like, wow, 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 wow. You want to be saying, I'm using my language techniques to influence you. And the only prerequisite on that, the only condition for that is that it must create the effect that you want from the reader. So in that example of black with screen, that is giving it's about drama, that particular thing. It's about being dramatic. It's also quite humorous because of the context it's in. But the point is that it's really dramatic. One word, full stop, and then a sentence stating something very clearly as a black or white statement. This is what it means. Every good film starts with a black screen. That is stated as a fact rather than an opinion. But because you've had that one word before, it just makes it even more dramatic. So the more dramatic you can be in your creative writing, the better. Please don't quote exactly that from Lego Batman, but it's that kind of thing. So it could be something like lonely. Every lonely person needs a friend. And then you go on to your unlikely friendship story. Yeah. So it's that what's the word? Structure. It's that structure of one word and then a sentence with a statement that makes it dramatic, and then it gives you somewhere to go. So it's a really good way to start your essay. Really dramatic, really punchy. Oh, that sounded really loud then. It didn't have, that's fine. So our creative writing, we're chucking in all our language techniques. We're showing our paragraphs, we're using our ambitious vocabulary, you're getting everything in there. That's your moment out of all your exams, out of your language, literature, blah, blah, blah. That's the one, the creative writing section is the one that you want to be chucking in everything. There is no right or wrong answer in the sense that you can write about a frog and a penguin, but you might also you might go really deep and look at something like a prisoner of war becoming friends with a soldier of war, or a prisoner of war camp warden becoming friends with a prisoner, or it could be anything. It doesn't matter what you pick as the thing you write about. What they're looking for is for you to just write and demonstrate that you know not just from your reading how to identify all those language techniques, but then how to implement them and use them appropriately. That's what they're looking for. That's what that whole paper's about. Can they see different language techniques and know that they're being manipulated as a reader, and how, and that their feelings are being manipulated by the author? And then can they then do the same and actually put that into practice and write themselves so that happens? So like I said, you'd have one question that is the kind of subjecty one. It'll give you a sentence, it'll give you a theme to write on. It's very vague. The other option they'll give you is a picture, And it's the ones that I've seen so far have been very specifically, write a description based on what is suggested by the picture here. So it'll show you a picture and it'll ask you to describe. That's so important. And we'll come to that when we start looking at our answering the question appropriately. The word describe is very different to write a story. So the reason they're asking for you to describe it is because they're looking for your literary techniques. They're looking for those language techniques in your descriptive writing, okay? So are you using a range of adjectives? Are you using emotions? Are you using the senses? If ever you're not sure what to write, look at the senses, okay? So you've got sight, smell, sound, touch. I always forget the fifth one, no matter which ones I do, whatever the other fifth one is. Hearing, did I miss that one? I think it's, no, I did that, no. Anyway, you know what they are. If you look at those, you know, I said to one of my students really struggles with starting, just starting. Once she starts, she's off and running, but just starting is really tough for her and she gets quite upset and quite anxious. So I said to her, okay, one thing you could do, if you're doing the description one, or even if actually you're doing the story, start with I stepped. So if you're looking at, I don't know, if it says in this picture, here is a description, write a description about an exotic destination, and it might be a picture of a holiday, like a sunset or a, I don't know, people playing on a beach. It could be anything. So it's usually like a piece of scenery or like a train station or something like that. And it'll say, if it's, you know, if it says something like, look at this destination, look at this holiday destination, write a description about a holiday that is similar to or the same as this picture below. So that means, remember, that you can describe the actual picture that they show you, or you can describe a similar one. So it doesn't have to be exactly the same. If you write about that picture and then you run out of things to write, stop making stuff up. As long as it's about the picture, pretend it's a different picture. You don't have to say this picture does this. Okay, you're describing it as if you are kind of doing the opening to a novel. Think of it like that. So if you start with something like I stepped, if it's a holiday you're describing or a destination you're describing, 5 senses and I stepped. So I stepped off the plane. The heat, one of the senses, the heat hit me like a, it's a great simile in there. You've already got on, you're in your second sentence, you've already got a language technique in there. The heat hit me like a wrecking ball. And if I can call it that, the heat hit me like a wrecking ball. I could smell, another sense, I could smell the melting tires of the aircraft as I descended the stairs. Bit of ambitious vocabulary in there. As I descended the stairs of the aircraft, I walked into the airport, and as I went inside the door, the air conditioning cooled me and I felt at ease immediately. I couldn't wait to get to my hotel. So then you're talking about touch, and you could go on to say the hairs on my arm stood on end because of the difference between the blazing heat outside and the ice cold air conditioning inside the airport. So can you see, even all you're talking about there is getting off a plane and walking in the airport, which can be the most boring story in the history of the world. But if you can put the senses in, put your language techniques in, you are going to be off onto a great start. Now, let's say that picture was slightly different. Let's say the picture was about a train station, like not quite as exciting as a holiday destination. So let's say it says, please describe a train station, describe the train station below or one similar. So let's start again with I stepped. I stepped off the train. Now you can say I stepped off the train. You could say I stepped onto the train. You could say I stepped through the turnstiles as they led me to the train that I knew was taking me to a golden future. Yeah. So I stepped, it doesn't have to be that, but if you just have that or something like that as a backup, you know, you can write those 2 words, start talking about the senses to do with that picture, and you're off and running. Okay. So try and have a little bit of a backup, have a default. Well, not a lot of people, I have heard of people who have written and memorized a description or a story and then tried to manipulate it for their exam. So they go into their exam basically with a pre-learned creative writing piece. I'm all for shortcuts and for getting the best mark possible with the least amount of work that's unnecessary. However, I wouldn't recommend this, because if you do that, it really shows, because it's not always relevant. My advice would be, learn your techniques, use your 5 senses, and start with something like 2 words, I stepped. And then that way, you know how to start, you know you've got a safety net, but it means that what you're writing is organic and also applies to whatever picture they give you. Because the other thing is as well, you don't know what they're going to give you. So, you know, give yourself a bit more credit than that. I'm not saying that to be a goody two shoes, because I'm telling you now, if I thought that would get you a higher mark and I thought that would be the easiest way for you to do it, I would be telling you to do it. That I don't think is a viable shortcut. So that's my advice. So I'm just going to share my screen with you, as I said I would about 5 million hours ago. As you might have noticed, I like to talk. So I'm just going to share my screen again with you. Here we go. So, okay. Right, so this is your paper breakdown. Let's start with language, actually, even though it's written there. So, you've got paper breakdown. So it's 1 hour and 45 minutes. Please remember this is AQA. If you're doing Edexcel or IGCSE or OCR or something different, take this on board as a way of structuring your breakdown, but do look it up exactly what it exactly is for the breakdown, so you know what's in each paper. So in your language exam, you've got 1 hour and 45. If you get extra time, and those of you who do get extra time will know, if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it, you're 1 hour 45. If you get extra time, you have approximately 2 hours and 12 minutes per paper, okay? So, paper 1 is creative writing. Section A is your reading. So it's exactly like I was talking about before. Within your section A, you will have a 4 marker, an 8 marker, an 8 marker, and a 20 marker, okay? As a very rough rule of thumb, my advice would be a mark a minute. So take the amount of marks there are, that's how many minutes you should take writing your answer. If you have extra time, that is to check your work, add things to your work, all that kind of stuff. Now I have put here like 4 marks, give it 5 minutes, 8 marks, give it 10 minutes, etc., so that it's giving you the proper amount of time. But the easiest way to remember it is a mark a minute. Obviously that takes it down to 4 minutes, 8 minutes, 8 minutes. It doesn't really matter. I mean, you're going to have extra time. If you're looking at about 45 minutes per section, that gives you 15 minutes to check your work. Now, I have to say, I was terrible. I never used to check my work. I was very lucky that I wrote well immediately. Please don't take that risk. Because when you are under stress and you are under pressure in that exam, you will make mistakes that you don't even know you're making, okay? And there'll be such silly mistakes. When you go through and read it again, how amazing would it be to go through, read it, and it be perfect and you not have to make any corrections? That would be amazing. That would be the goal, right? However, you're not going to know that until you've done it. And the last thing I want for you is to walk out of that exam room going, oh my God, did I write that right? Did I say that right word? Did I do this? Did I do the alliteration? Did I do it? That's the last thing you want. My aim for you is to walk out of the exam room of each exam going, I did everything I could in that exam. I did everything I've trained to do. Because that's basically what I'm doing. I'm not your teacher. I'm training you for your exam. Okay, we're being very specific here. So please, I cannot emphasize this enough. Check your work. It could be the difference between 1 or 2 grades. Because if you've got, for example, if you're doing an inspector calls and you misspell the name Priestley, oh my gosh, your examiner is going to hate you. They won't hate you. It's fine. They'll just hate the fact that you've misspelled the word Priestley when it's on the exam paper. So that's one of the things you want to make sure you've done. Have you correctly spelt things that are on your exam paper? You know, if you've been writing about an author, have you written their name correctly? Because that is such a basic requirement. If you had ambitious vocabulary and you had one word that you used that you misspelt slightly, they're not going to mark you down for that. You don't have to have 100% success rate on your spelling, but if you're consistently doing the same word wrong, or you're consistently doing a couple of different things wrong, that's when they say, well, actually, you know, you'll see the mark scheme when we do the mark scheme, you'll understand that a bit better. But when you see that, you'll see how that impacts your answer. So checking your work is genuinely can be the difference between you being 1 or 2 grades higher than you would if you didn't. Please trust me. Section B is going to be your writing. Now, I've said 1 hour, but obviously you've got an hour 45 here. Okay. Now, let me change that. Let's be a bit more specific here, Haley. See, I didn't check my work. There you go. Pace and point. 45 minutes, it's 40 marks, a mark a minute. Ta-da! However, we're going to get onto our planning and stuff and structuring, but we're going to look at the fact that for 45 minutes, you're going to be doing your writing section. And in that time, you're going to be spending, and this is going to scare you, but it's okay, 20 to 25 minutes planning your answer. You're then going to spend the remaining 20 to 25 minutes writing up your answer. There are 2 reasons for this, which I will repeat when we get to our exam technique hour. And the reason is that you are graded on 2 sections. You're graded on content and technical accuracy, and you're graded on structure and, no, hang on, I've got that the wrong way. Structure and content, and then technical accuracy. That's right, sorry. Your technical accuracy is, can you correctly identify language techniques with the right terminology, the right name? So can you say, this is alliteration, and be correct that that is actually alliteration, for example? With content and structure, that's about what you're putting in it and how you structure your answer. So a whole half, in fact, I think it's even more, of your marks are on how you structure it. And we're not taught that in school, most students. In fact, I'm yet to meet a student out of 27 this year that has been taught how to structure their answer. And that's worth more than half of your marks. My gosh. So I'm getting very passionate now. By planning for the first half, you're getting the best possible content into your essay. You're getting the best possible quotes or experiences of your own to back up what you've said, which is going to make your writing much more compelling, interesting, and supported, which is noted in the mark scheme. And it's also going to mean that you are then focusing for the plan on your content and structure. You don't have to worry about spelling. You don't have to worry about alliteration, assonance, language techniques. You don't have to worry about that. You're just looking, what am I putting in it? And how am I structuring my argument? Okay. It can look a higgledy-piggledy mess. Doesn't matter. Just get it all down, right? The next half, when you say, right, my plan is done halfway through that time, halfway through that 45 minutes, my plan is done. Now I'm going to write. You don't have to think about what you're writing about because it's all in your plan. Your goal is to focus on your spelling and making sure that you're identifying the right language techniques and chucking in a few high-level vocabulary, high-level words. Okay.
And that's why I emphasize the planning and have my essay template, which we'll go through in one of our next sessions. And I emphasize that separation of technical accuracy, because they're the two things you're marked on. And when it comes to the mark scheme, you cannot go, they basically start at 0. They read your answer, start at 0, and then they go, right, have they done everything that's in level 1? Yes, they have. Great, I can go into level 2. Have they done everything in level 2? Yes, they have. I can go into level 3. If you have done everything in level 3 except one thing, they can't put you into level 4. So if you haven't got technical accuracy, or if you haven't structured your answer, but everything else is like a level 6, 7, 8, 9, they can't put you up to a 4. Okay, so it's knowing what is needed for each level is going to help you just get straight into the next level. And it's so unfair, because you could have a level 9 answer, but if you haven't got ambitious vocabulary, so just by putting in 3 really exceptional words, you won't get a 9. How unfair is that? But when you know that, 3 words is nothing, right? So that's how you know. So we'll get onto that in a bit more detail later. Then you've got paper 2, writer's perspectives, which we were talking about. So section A is your reading, and this is a slightly different breakdown. So can you see here how you've got 4, 8, 8, 20? So it's still worth the same amount of marks, this section and this section, but you have a longer section than this here with a 12, and you have a 20 marker here, a 16 marker instead of a 20 marker. Okay, so obviously if you're doing a mark a minute and you're looking at your plan properly, and you plan according to how many marks you're looking for, that's going to be so much easier for you to achieve, because you know what you're doing. Now at the moment that might be a bit sort of like stabbing in the dark, because you're like, well, what's the difference between a 20 marker and a 16 marker? It's 4 marks, it's hardly anything. And to a large extent I do agree, but 10 minutes of writing is actually quite a big difference. So it could be one extra point that you're making in the 20 marker that you don't make in your 16 marker, or it might be that you make your point, you put your supporting evidence, but you don't need to then go into explanation or, you know, sort of elaborate on anything. Whereas the 20 marker, you would. It depends on the question. We'll get to that in one of our next sessions. Section B is writing. It's 40 marks, exactly the same as your section B writing in paper 1. So you're going to be doing section B writing. It's 40 marks. You've got 45 minutes. When you have done in paper 2, when you've done all of section A for 45 minutes and all of section B for 45 minutes, you should have 15 minutes left to go through and check your writing. Okay, and that is particularly important for this one. Start with the section B check-in, then go back to this, because if you've made a mistake here, we're talking 1 or 2 marks in each question. If you make a mistake consistently in here, that could bring you down quite a bit. In your language paper 1 and 2, it's the same thing. Okay. Going on to our literature, just to finish off today. Oh, look at that, perfect time, and 5 minutes left. We've got exactly the same premise. You've got paper 1 and paper 2. Now, this has changed since last year. So I want you to double check this with your teacher, what is on each paper. And we'll go through the specification anyway, but it's always better just to know that your teacher is on the same page as you. As far as I am aware, section A is on your Shakespeare. So that's going to be, most people are doing Macbeth. So it's either going to be Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, whatever. Don't be put off, because when you see your paper, it's going to have a million questions, because it has a question for every Shakespeare play that could be studied. So you're going to have a question for Macbeth, a question for Romeo and Juliet, one for A Midsummer Night's Dream, one for Twelfth Night, one for... You're going to have all these questions that are nothing to do with you. Just pick the one you know, pick the one you've studied, yeah? And you answer that one. Again, this is going to be 45 minutes. Section B, 45 minutes. It's going to be your 19th century novel. So, A Christmas Carol, Frankenstein, Of Mice and Men, Lord of the Flies, actually I didn't mention before, Lord of the Flies, whatever your 19th century novel is, that is going to be your your brain went blank. That is going to be what you're answering your question on. And again, you're going to be given a list of questions that are nothing to do with you except the one you've been studying, and you just pick that one. Please don't, even if you think you know another book better, but you've not studied it in school, please don't pick that one. Pick the one you've done in school, because there are things that you will know about it that you won't know about one that you know just from personal experience. Paper 2, again, section A, 45 minutes. That's going to be on modern prose or drama. So in Inspector Calls or any other plays that you've been doing, prose or dramatic texts, I don't think anyone's doing anything other than an Inspector Calls this year, but I may be wrong. Section B, poetry, anthology and unseen. Okay, so again, you've got 45 minutes on each section, and the only difference between literature and language is that within each paper on language, you have half reading, half writing. The reading section doesn't mean you're not writing. You are writing your answers, and some of them are quite lengthy, but it's commenting and analysing and writing on what you're observing in some writing sources, okay? Whereas the second half is on writing. In literature, paper 1, section A, you're writing. Paper 1, section B, you're writing. Paper 2, section A, you're writing. Paper 2, section B, you're writing. So make sure for your lit papers, you've got a nice warmed up wrist ready to do your writing, or if you're on the computer, make sure you are ready. So I hope that has been useful for you today. Just to recap and stop sharing. So just to recap, you are going to have 2 GCSE exams, 2 subjects. One is English literature. Sorry, let me do it the other way around because that's what I did earlier. One is English language, one is English literature. In each one, you have 2 papers or 2 exams. And in each exam or paper, you have 2 sections, 2 sections. In your English language, you have, sorry, just a little thought came into my mind there. This is exactly what you do in a conclusion for your essay. What I'm doing right now, summarizing and basically doing what I did right at the beginning of the lesson, okay? Just letting you know what we've covered. So I'm going to start that again. English language, English literature, 2 exams for each, 2 sections in each exam. Each section is 45 minutes. In your language, you've got 45 minutes reading, 45 minutes writing, 45 minutes reading, 45 minutes writing. In your literature, all 4 of the sections, so paper 1, A and B, paper 2, A and B, are all writing, and you have 45 minutes for each of your sections. So although I've gone into a lot of depth and detail about all of those different exams and how it works, I hope that's been useful, and I hope that has set you up ready for what we're going to cover in the next few sessions. Okay, I am going to get you writing and doing a few more tasks and things coming up, but today was much more about you getting solid in what is required of you in your exams, so that even after today you can go, do you know what, I feel a lot more confident about what to expect when I walk into my exam room. Thank you so much. As I said, my name is Hayley. If you have any questions at all, feel free to write on the chat, or if you want to email me or message me or anything like that, all your parents should have my number on WhatsApp. You can call me. Yeah, basically, don't be afraid. No question is stupid, and I'm here to help. And we're going to get you through with some amazing improvements in your exams. Have a great day, and thank you for being here. Bye.